We are on Yoma, Daf Nun Amid Beis. A couple lines down, 4 lines down, Gufa. So we stated previously. Boy Rebbe Lazar has the following Shaila. This Shaila is going to take us for a bit. L'divrei ha'emer par Yom Kippurim karbon yochid. According to the one that says that the par of the Kohen of Yom Kippur, the par of Yom Kippur that the Aaron HaKohen, the Kohen Gadol would bring to be mechaper on himself and his family and the Kohanim in general. So does that have a din of a karbon yochid? So that was one shaila we had. The last opinion was that it's not a karbon sibur, but it's a karbon of shutfin, and therefore it's not oisa. It cannot make a tmura. But if you're of the opinion that it is a karbon yochid, oisa temura or einay oisa temura, can, if somebody, let's say the Kohen Gadol would say that I want a different animal to be my par, instead of the one that I read was Makadish, and it should be in place of this one. That's called the Temura. Temura does not work, but the second animal has Kedusha. So that shaila is, does the par of the par of Yom Kippur, is it Isa Temura or Ein Isa Temura? So it says, what exactly is the shaila? If the kohanim are being mischaper by, so then it's a carbon of shutfin, and it doesn't make tmura. We already established that. So what's a shaila? So where it says, maybe the shaila is, I basar makdish azlinan, I basar mischaper azlinan. Who is makdish this? This was the Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol is one who's makdish it. Who's being mischaper with it? Mischaper, you have lots of people, meaning a regular carbon shutfin, so the shutfin are makdish it. Here it's only one person who's makdish it. That's the Kohen Gadol. So that's a good shaila. Basar makdish azlinan. If we go basar the makdish, then you could make a temura. If we go basar the mischaper, the people that are getting the kapara through this carbon, so then that would be all the kahanim, and that would be a carbon shutfin, and you wouldn't be able to make a temura. So where it says pshita, it's pashit to basar mischaper azlinan. That's pashit that we go, in terms of temura, we look at who's getting mischaper through this carbon. And if the carbon is being mechaper on the kehanim, so then it's a carbon of shutvin. Why is that? Because the owners of the carbon are considered those that are getting the kapara. So they're considered the owners, and therefore it's a carbon shutvin, and you can't make a temura. Why is that so pashut? He tells us 3 rules. Number 1, hamakdish moisav chemish. The makdish, the person who's makdish it, even if he's makdish it for somebody else, and now if they are going to be, if I got a mum, they have to be machalal it, so now the makdish has to add a chaimish to the value, because the Torah specifically says by chaimish v'im hamakdish yigoel. If the makdish is going to redeem this animal, so then he has to add a chaimish. That's a din in the makdish, not in the bailim, not in the mischaper. Okay, the hamischaper oisa batemura. That's what he says straight up. It's the mischaper, the one who's getting the kapara, who is understood to be the bailim. That means even if somebody else is makdish for my sake, let's say I was chayiv a carbon chatas, and someone said, you know what, I'm going to take care of your chatas for you, and he's makdish it for me. So now he's the makdish, I'm the mischaper. So I'm the one who would make tmura, not him. That's a mischaper is a tmura. V'hatoyrem mishaloi ashal chaveroi, teves hana shaloi. First of all, toyrem mishaloi ashal chaveroi. Let's say you have a kri, a pile of grain, and I say, you know what? I'm going to make what I have, my own grain. I'm going to use it for to be take off trumas for your grain. So you don't have to take truma from yours. I'll take it from mine. Let's say I didn't think you were going to give truma, so I'm going to take the truma from my grain for yours. That's being a toyrem mishaloi al shachaveri. Okay, now who gives the truma? I do. it belongs to me. Now, what does it mean? It doesn't belong to me. Truma belongs to a kohen. But I have the right to give it to the kohen that I want to give it to. Not only that, let's say there's a guy who has a grandson who's a kohen. Right? His daughter married a kohen, so he has grandchildren that are kohanim. He wants to give it to them. So maybe he'd even give me money, so I give them the truma. Yeah, give me a little tip. That's called tevis hana. So the tevis hana belongs to the toirim, the person who made the truma. Okay, so there's a three halachas Rabbi Avo said, and then Rabbi Yochanan, and one of them being that the mischaper is the one who makes a tmura. Okay, so therefore it's pashut that hamischaper oisa b'tmura. So that couldn't have been Rabbi Elazar's shaila. So we're a little stuck. What is his shaila? Says the Gemara, hachi kami ba'ilai. This is, so pshitalai, I'm sorry, pshitalai the basim mischaper azinin, v'hachi kami ba'ilai. So here is Reb Elazar Shaila. Again, if the Parashat Yom Kippurim is a carbon yachid, he wanted to know, does it oisa temura, ain't oisa temura? So what's the Shaila? Says the Gemara, v'hachi kami ba'ilai. Achiv ha'kayhanim b'kvi'usa mischapri, Aydilma bekufya mischapri. Two new terms that I learned. Bikviusa mischapri means that they are actual partners in this par, and they're getting a kapara through like shutvan. They own a chelik of this par, and therefore it's a chatas of shutvan because they get their kapara through themselves. They own a chelik of this par, and that's how they're getting the kapara. That's what it means b'kviusa mischapri, like any other person who gets a kapara. That's one side. Oidelma bekufya mischapri, or perhaps their kapara comes bekufya. That means it's floating on the shoulders of the kohen gadol. Really, it's the kohen gadol who's the ikar mischaper here. Agav, the kohen gadol, the kohanim get a kapara as well. Now, I don't know how that works, but it's not theirs. It's a carbon. It's not nikra shmam. Rashi says it's a carbon yachid, and they're kafa. They're floating on the back of the kapara of the kohen gadol. Okay, so that's the shayla. If it's bikviyusa, so then it's considered a carbon shutvin, and there is no temura. If it's a bekufya, that means it is the carbon of the kohen gadol really alone, and it's just like the rest of the kohen get dragged along, then it would be a regular carbon yachid, and there would be temura. So now we understand Rebbe Elazar's shaila. So let's see if we can bring a raya to it. Toshima chomer bezavach mi betemura, v'chomer betemura mi bezavach. A carbon has a chumrah over the temura, and the temura has a chumrah over a actual carbon. Listen to this. Chomer bezavach. So let's talk about the chumras that a regular carbon has over the temura. Chomer bezavach shehazavach noeg b'yachid kibetzibur. Carbones you can have whether they belong to a yachid or a tzibur. V'deicha es Shabbos. A carbon can be deicha Shabbos v'esatuma, and the times the carbon is deicha tuma. V'oisa temura, and a carbon can make another animal its temura. Okay. Masha enkim b'temura. These halachas do not apply by temura. They're not deicha Shabbos or tuma. You don't make a temura. If you go to an animal and say that's already temura, and say you want another animal to be the temura of it, it does not chal. It's only noig by a yachid, not by a tzibur. Karbanos zevach, carbon tzibur as well. Okay. Those are the chumras that karbanos zevach will have over a temura. What about the other way? Chomer b'temura mi bezevach. There are chumras that a temura has over a carbon. Sha'temura chala al balmum kavua. A temura could be chal on an animal that's a balmum, even though there's no way for it to be brought on as a mizbeach, a regular carbon. If you mistakenly are makdish an animal that's a balmum, so then it does not become a carbon. It will become kedushas mammon, you have to give its value to the base of Mikdash, but it doesn't become Kedushas Aguf, it can't become a carbon. But Tamura could be Chal even on an animal that's a Bal Mum. Number one, Ve'ena Yotze L'chulin, Ligozes Uliaved. If it gets, it cannot, I guess if it does have a mum, so then you're going to be paida it, and when you're paida it, so now you have to just eat it, shecht it and eat it. You cannot use its shearings, that's giza, or chalav if it has milk. How to go here? Okay. Masha enkim bezevach. Masha enkim, these halachas do not apply by karbanas. Okay, carbon, if it gets a mum and you're paid it, so then you can use it. It's a lechulin, becomes regular chulin. Okay, says the Gemara. Well, let's talk. What kind of carbon here are we talking about here? In fact, the Gemara, Hai Zavach, Hechidami. Which carbon is this? If it's a carbon yachid, midachi Shabbos or tumah. Regular carbon yachid is not going to be deicha Shabbos or tumah. So we have to be talking about a carbon sibur, which would be deicha Shabbos and tumah. Well, mi oiset temura. There's a carbon sibur oiset temura. El lav, no. What could we be talking about? We're talking about the par of the kain gadol. V'deiches hashavs, v'deiches hatuma, dekvile zman, because it's got a set time. V'aiset temura de carbon yachidu, and it'll make a temur because it's called a carbon yachid. So we have a raya that the kehanim kapara comes bekufya of the kain gadol, and it's a regular carbon yachid. Amr Shesh is loy. No, we're not talking about the par. Be'ilei shalaron, we're talking about the ayil. Bye. We're talking about the ayil. And the ayil was a for sure carbon yachid. Hachinami mistavra. These are the paroi. If it's talking about the par of the kohen gadol, temura the par Shabbos v'tumuhu delay dachia. Habachal mikra of karva. It sounds like in this, it sounds like that the zevach. We're talking about a zevach, and it's temura, right? These are the chumras of a carbon, and we're talking about the carbon is the par. These are the chumras that a par has over its temura. So what's going to be the halacha of the temura? The temura is not deicha Shabbos or tumah, but it sounds like you would bring it on a weekday. Yeah, a par. This par is a chatas. You can't bring this temura. You don't bring a temura's chatas. Says the Gemara. Temur de par Shabbos temur de leidachia b'chol mikra of karva. Ha temur is chatasi, v'temur is chatas lemisa azla. Because there's no bam to be mischaper, because there's no carbon for it, there's no chait that it's being mischaper on. So it goes le misa. It's not being brought as a carbon. So the contrast in the Mishnah doesn't work if we're talking about the par of the Kohen Gadol. It says the Gemara, no. La'ilam pare. We are talking about the par of Yom Kippur. Umay Temura, when the Brisa is talking about the Temura, it's not talking about a specific Temura. Shem Temura, it's talking about Temuras in general. These are halachas that apply to things that are a Temura. Okay, well, let's be consistent. Let's say that the first part of the Mishnah, when it says Zevach, it's not talking about a specific carbon, it's talking about carbonis in general. Says Hashem Zevach Lekatani. No, that's not what the Mishnah means. Mimai, how do you know? Because Midiktani Chaimer B'Temura B'Shat Temura Chala Al Bal Mum Kavua Ve'ena Yotze Lechulan Legazes V'Liaved These Akadaydach Mai Zevach Shem Zevach. If you're telling me that we're talking when the Brisa says Zevach, it doesn't mean a specific Zevach. It means Zevachim in general. So then this isn't true because you have karbanis that are chal on a mum, on animals that are of a mum. Va'ika b'char, top of nun alpha medalef. You have b'char u'maiser, that those are going to be chal on animals which are, because a b'char is kadosh mirechem, bein tam, bein balmum. Rashi says, vein lishum pidyain. You can't be paid it. Okay. Ella. So that halacha applies to a carbon. So the Mishnah can't be talking about carbonas in general. It has to be talking about a specific carbon. Okay, so now you have a good, interesting brisa. The beginning of the Mishnah is talking about a specific carbon. Now we want to say it's the par of Yom Kippur. And the second part, when it says Masha Enkin, or the Chumrah of the Tumura, is about Tumura in general, the Shem Tumura. In fact, the Gemara, Maishna Tumura, Shem Tumura, Maishna Tumura. Why is it that Tumura you'll talk about the Shem Tumura and Zavach you won't? Says the Gemara, Shem Tumura Achasi. But Zavach Ika Bachar V'Ika Meiser. See, when it comes to Tumura, all of the halachas that we mentioned will apply to all Tumuras. Masha Enki, when it comes to a Zavach, there's differentiation. Okay. In fact, the Gemara, Ulev Sheishes, Adamoikim La Be'ele Shel Aaron, Lukma Be'Pesach. Why is Rav Sheishes want to put it, to say it's talking about the aisle of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur? Why doesn't he say it's talking about the Karban Pesach? The Karban Pesach is Deicha Shabbos Esatuma, Vaisa Timura, the Karban Yachidu. You got all that. It's Deicha Shabbos, it's Deicha Tuma, and it makes it Timur because it's a Karban Yachid. Says the Gemara, no, not so fast. Kasavra ain't sheikh in a Pesach ala Yachid. He holds that a Karban Pesach has to have more than one person included in it. So therefore it will not be shechted ala Yachid. Okay, but look at Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni could be brought just by one person. In fact, the Gemara, Midachi Tuma. Will a Karban Pesach be Deicha Tuma? It's not Deicha Tuma. So Memela, it is going to be, it can't be the Zavach of the Brisa. In fact, the Gemara weiter, Amle Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua L'Rava. Okay, so we mentioned previously that a Pesach is called a Karban Yachid, and a Chagiga is called the Karban Sibur. That was on Daf Nun Amud Aleph. We mentioned Reb Meir and Reb Yochanan. Reb Meir said, Amar Loi Reb Meir V'Alei Par Yom Kippurim V'Chavita Kohen Gadol V'Pesach the Karban Yachid Hein. And we had Rabbi Yaakov who mentioned V'Alei Par Hamdavar V'Shal Tzibur V'Sira V'Zcham V'Chagiga the Karban Sibur. So why is a Karban Pesach called the Karban Yachid and a Chagiga called the Karban Tzibur? Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua L'Rav Ma'atana Ma'ishna Pesach the Karban Yachid Ma'ishna Chagiga the Karban Tzibur. I mean, they're both owned by individuals. Imishim Da'asi B'Knufya. Well, you know what? They're brought in a crowd. The Karban Pesach had to be brought in a group. And Shalish Kita, they filled up the Azara, was brought with the Chagig was brought on Yantif. So they're Asi B'Knufya. So Pesach not Asi B'Knufya. So the Chagiga, the Pesach, they both brought B'Knufya on Yom Tif. So says the Gemara, but Ika Pesach Sheni, the Asi B'Knufya. But L'maisa Pesach Sheni wasn't a major group. Whoever was Tami brought his Pesach Sheni. Well, if you're going to say that we're talking about if it's a Pesach Sheni, so then, I'm sorry, the Gemara answers, Ika Pesach Sheni, the Loi Asi B'Knufya. The reason why the Pesach Sheni is called a Karban Yachid is because when we said a Pesach is a Karban Yachid, is because a Pesach Sheni is not brought up a Knufya. Okay. If you tell me that the Brisa that calls Pesach a Karban Pesach a Karban Yachid was talking about a Karban Sheni, there the Brisa said that Pesach is Deicha Shabbos and Yom Tif. So you should have Pesach Sheni, maybe Deicha Shabbos, but it's not Deicha Tuma. Imkeni Deicha Shabbos ve'esa Tuma. Amar Lei Ein Commander Amar Dachi. Yeah, there is such a sheet that holds that Pesach Sheni is Deicha Tuma. The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. Pesach Sheni Deiches HaShabbos ve'ena Deiches HaTuma. Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer Av Deiches HaTuma. In fact, my time, the Tanakama. Why would the Tanakama hold that it's not? If it's Deiches Shabbos, but it's not Deiches Tuma? Amrachal, listen. He says very simply, Mipnei Tuma Dechisai. Why is this guy bringing a Pesach Sheni? Because he was Tamei on Pesach Rishon. And Pesach Rishon was Doichim. Tumah was Doichim from bringing the Pesach Rishon. So he was already got pushed off for bringing it B'tumah, for trying, because he was Tamei. V'yasa B'tumah. So now his makeup he's going to do B'tumah. The Pesach was not meant to be brought B'tumah. Rabbi Yehuda Amar L'cha, Amar Kra, Kechol Chukas HaPesach, Yasu Oisei. The Torah says you have all of the halachas of Pesach. That's how you can make this. And if the current Pesach is doiche tumah, if everyone was tumah, so you could bring it. So then afilu betumah. So hutra, and then hachziru alav. I'm sorry. Afilu betumah. HaTorah hachziru alav la'seisa b'Torah. Of course, the Torah is trying to get him to do it b'tahara. But loizach, if he wasn't zeicha, yasena betumah. So then let him at least do it betumah. Okay, we'll stop here.